Why is Centaurus the newest star subvariant? Welcome back, everyone, and hi there if you're new. If you are new here and this is the first video of ours that you've stumbled upon, you should know that this piece will build upon things we've already learned in previous videos, and the playlist we've created here on the channel can help catch you up. But specifically, I strongly recommend that you watch our video Why Star Variants Are Named from Greek Letters first, and then come back here for this one, as this piece will make a whole lot more sense after you've watched that one first. So we're making this piece during what we commonly call the middle of July 2022. And during the past week or so, some headlines have been pushed out to the public about a new subvariant of Dorona that we're going to zoom in and take a look at the real reason why this is happening now. But it's this subvariant that we're being told in these stories that is causing now a supposed record high number of cases of Dorona, and we're told it's because this particular subvariant is so highly contagious. Now, last we left this whole Dorona story, as we looked at in our first video about it that I mentioned earlier, that was right at the end of what we commonly call January of 2022, which is when the hardcore push of Dorona narrative overall began to fall apart rapidly, as we've seen play out. And so, even though the story writers have shifted gears toward wrapping up this whole scary monsterant variant spin-off of the original theme that they have been running with for so long, they still have to follow the timeline of all the previous scripts that they've already written. But now they have to start wrapping it up in the incremental way that they have to do it. So they're now giving us these less scary subvariants in the story. So let's take a look first at why it's a subvariant that we're being presented with now. Here are a couple of definitions from dictionaries of what sub means on the screen. And you can see that we're talking about under, beneath, below, as in submarine, as in below the water, or subsoil, below the soil or the earth, and a subordinate or secondary part of something else. Now, since the emergence of Omicron, there's only been talk of the subvariants of that, and they've usually been talked about using numbers to designate them. But this latest subvariant, 2.75, has been given the nickname Centaurus, and as you'll see, this is the real reason why. This is an image of what is occurring in the sky story from the perspective of someone on the ground looking up at it in the northern hemisphere. And we're looking specifically in an area of the sky found by facing south and looking up above the horizon. This is a very special place in the sky we've discovered and nicknamed the real oracle or the real all-seeing eye. Now, although we certainly are not the first to discover this very special place in the sky, we are the first that we know of anyway, that have discovered that it is actually being used as a template to create every famous story you've ever heard of, from ancient times right up to this very day. A template being used by a very small cult that have passed this knowledge only to those in their small cult and have hidden it everywhere in plain sight from the rest of us. And it's also what's being used to control everything you think you know. And as far as we know, we are the first to have made this discovery for ourselves outside of that cult. And that is why we can and are sharing this enormous discovery and the massive amount of highest knowledge that goes with it here with you, one piece at a time. So the sky story we're looking at here is what's going on in the real oracle or the real all-seeing eye in the sky on July 15th. The hour after the sun sets. And we're going to focus in on just these two stars right here, way down low to just above the horizon, just to the west of where you see the constellation of Lupus there. These two stars belong to a constellation that the rest of is hidden from our view, appearing to be partially underground, or in other words, in the subsoil. But since this area of the sky has been known to some of our ancient ancestors, like we've talked about many times before, as the celestial sea, you could also say that this constellation appears to be partly under the sea, as in submarine. So let's dive down then into what appears to be the underground from our northern hemisphere viewing perspective and see what constellation these two stars belong to. Then, of course, you can see it's Centaurus. Centaurus is said to represent a creature called a centaur, a mythical half-horse, half-man creature, not to be confused with the even more famous centaur Sagittarius that travels higher in the sky than does Centaurus. And at this time of the year, you can see that Sagittarius, the centaur, is almost completely risen above the eastern horizon, but for just a few stars of it that remain in the subsoil from our perspective. Now, this time of the year, the rest of the constellation of Centaurus, as it appears mostly from our perspective to be in the subsoil or underground, it is mostly visible, except for those two stars, to stargazers in the southern hemisphere, as in Australia or New Zealand. Now you know the real reason why this Dorona subvariant is named Centaurus, because the Sky Story template rules that this cult of bad actors have to follow has the constellation of Centaurus partially submerged below the horizon from our perspective at exactly this time. And it just happens to coincide with the whole wrapping up of the timeline of this long-running Dorona script. There's much more to learn by visiting our website, starsnearme.com. And to those of you who support our work, we thank you. And we thank you for spending a few minutes of your time with us here again. So until next time, stay lit and be well.